Hey, it's your boy T Rob. Welcome back to the podcast, Unapologetic Perspective. Um, Once again, we've been watching the numbers with every video that we put out. We're seeing our numbers are going up, our following is going up, and I want to tell everybody I really appreciate the love for the content that we're putting out. This stuff is near and dear to my heart, really. You know, the purpose of this show is to talk about my journey. So, if anything in my journey can help somebody out in their journey in life, that's the purpose of all of the content that I'm putting out. I believe wholeheartedly that I had to go through something in order to have a message for everybody out there who may think that they're alone in the struggle out here and that they've hit a dead end or hit a wall when it comes to trying to figure out what the direction is in life that they need to be going. So once again, like I said, man, I appreciate all the love that you all have shown me by liking and subscribing. If you haven't yet, if you watch my content more than once, if you're getting something from it, please hit that like button. Please subscribe to the channel. It helps the algorithm out. As we build, we're going to be putting out better content. I look forward to doing interviews with some of your favorite content creators talking about serious issues. We want to try to address some things within ourselves, and that's the purpose of this. Is talking about what we can do, because we can't change the world. As I've said before, you can only see the world for what it is. The world can upset you, and you can feel like the world needs to change to fit what it is or the narrative that you believe. But at the end of the day, the world is what it is. We want to learn how to navigate within the world so we can have more peace in our souls. The thing about when you have a peaceful inside, it translates or it trickles down to everything else in your life. You'll find that your relationships are much easier. Your finances start to flow much better. Energy is surrounded by everything, right? Anything that we hold on to or put a lot of pressure on, we break. But the minute that we start to bring ourselves into ease and out of dis-ease, right? Let's look at that word, ease and dis-ease, right? Dis-ease being connected to the word disease, as in having something wrong internally. We can look at it in the same way with our mind state. When our minds are in dis-ease, then we start to realize that everything that we want, everything that we try to manifest, we push away from us. That's what these videos are about, and I appreciate the love. I ended up dropping out of high school when I was about 15 years old. I had moved a number of different places. I'd gone from a suburb outside of Chicago to living with my dad for a couple of months in California. When that didn't work out, I moved back in with my mom and my stepfather in University Park outside of Chicago. And when that didn't work out, I moved back to the West Side with my grandparents. I started going to a high school on the West Side, and it was a whole different world than what I was used to, high school at least. The high school that I went to wasn't the best by any means. It was one of the worst schools on the West Side, and it seemed like there was always something going on. When I was going to that school, it was the first place that I had ever seen somebody get killed. Interestingly enough, it was at the Valentine's Day dance, and there was a guy who I'd actually got into a conflict inside of the dance with. And when we got outside, we were all standing around waiting for people from our neighborhood to walk home because it was late, and it just wasn't safe for you to walk home at night by yourself. You know, we lived about maybe a 25-minute to 30-minute walk away from the school. So it was just best for us to click up and everybody from that neighborhood walk home together. It was like constantly wars going on between gangs and stuff like that. And it just wasn't a good idea to walk home by yourself. It was times where quite often we would hear stories about things that went on while people were on their way to school or coming from school. Like a couple of girls had gotten raped, you know, walking home from school, going underneath the viaducts, things like that. There were shootings that happened where guys would get out of school and they'd be at the park and somebody would do a drive-by or something to that extent. So it wasn't a good idea to walk home with. Yeah, on this particular day when this guy got killed that I went to school with, um, we were all standing outside of the building waiting on everybody from our neighborhood to meet up so that we can walk home. It was some guys across the street, and I noticed these guys were standing away from the crowd that was standing right in front of the school. I was by the door looking inside, waiting on the guys from my neighborhood to come out, and I see three guys standing across the street. And it felt a little strange that they were standing away from the group, kind of looking at the group, but I paid no attention. I went back to looking inside the building to see if my group was coming out. That's when I heard three pops. Now, me and the guy who got into it actually got into it because he was popping balloons in my ear all night while I was trying to dance with this girl. And my brain was processing the popping noise as somebody popping balloons again. It wasn't until everybody who was standing down at the bottom of the stairs came running past me into the building that I realized something was going on. I turned around and noticed that they had this guy on the ground and they were shooting him. It took a second for my brain to process the whole thing, but then I took off and ran into the building after everybody else did. After a while, it just became too much to go to school. I kept getting into fights with people. It got to the point where they were bringing guys from the neighborhood to meet up with me after school to try to jump me. So I said, enough is enough of this. After I dropped out, I found myself just out in the streets hanging out, smoking weed, hanging with my stepbrother, doing all the wrong things. I had no direction in life. And then one day he told me, he said, man, you hanging around me every day, but you really don't have any money. And you need to have some money if you're gonna hang around me. And so he pulled away from me and I found myself just kind of out there with no direction. It was this guy from the neighborhood who was a semi-big time drug dealer. And he was having problems with his guys who were workers. They kept getting locked up. They kept doing stuff that had the police paying attention to them. And one day he was out there frustrated and screaming because they had just lost some of his work and gotten locked up for like the third time. And I remember I approached him and I said, hey man, if you need somebody to work the tip for you, I can. And he told me, he said, man, be here at 8 o'clock tomorrow and I'll put you on. I'll give you a shot. So I came out there the next day and he did just that. He put me on, he gave me a shot. I kind of took off with selling drugs in a way that was very natural for me because I knew not to operate the way that everybody else was operating. I didn't bring a lot of attention to myself. I made it look as if I was doing something else instead of just standing on the corner and selling drugs. I would actually have guys in the neighborhood pull their car into the alley and let me wash their car. At the same time, I was doing what I was doing. I also had a very good relationship with the quote unquote crackheads in the neighborhood, to where I treated them like they were human. I didn't see them as less than me. I treated them like they were people. And because of that, they always spent their money with me and they never told on me to the police. I quickly graduated from selling crack to selling heroin, which was like a bigger monster. Heroin at the time, I don't know what it is right now, but at that time, it was considered to be an attempted murder case if you got caught with heroin. So I was more nervous than ever before doing this. But I had so many near misses, it was crazy. It was like, as soon as I would step off the block, the police would ride past. As soon as I would go in the house, the police would ride down and snatch up everybody off the block. It was a time when I was working a certain tip. And for some reason, something told me not to work this area anymore. And I moved away from it. The next guy who ended up working that spot, some guys from across the way actually came and shot at him. So I kept having these near misses. And I never put two and two together. What I later realized was that my grandmother was a praying woman and my mom was a praying woman. And I truly believe that those prayers were the reason why I didn't end up dead or in jail at the time. When I reflect on it now, I see that as the reason why I was probably able to get through that period of my life and not end up like some of the other people who were out there doing the things that I was doing. I remember at one point in time, I was selling crack, and one of my biggest customers was my stepfather's brother. He would come through and he would buy 50, 60 rocks for me at a time. And I remember one time he walked off. He had just came and made a big purchase from me, and he had walked off. And as he was walking off, it just really set hard on my soul that what I was doing was wrong. And that was the thing about me. I had a conscience. I came from a decent family. I wasn't like some of these guys where their whole entire existence was predicated on selling drugs. And at the time, I didn't know it, but there was something bigger for me in the making. And this was the reason why it didn't sit right with me doing the things that I was doing. I ended up owing some guys some money. And instead of taking that L and making it right, I decided to get out. And when I was ready to get out, my mom was there waiting for me, and she was ready to help me out. Up until that point, she had kind of had to wash her hands of me because I was just on the path of destruction, and there was nothing that she can do about it. During the time I was making this transition, we ended up going to church, and we had a guest speaker at the church at this time. And as they often do, they called people up to have hands laid on them. And my mom went up to have hands laid on her. And this woman who was preaching at the church looked at my mom and said, "You have a son in the room here right now, don't you?" And she said, "Yeah." And the preacher said, "God is going to save your son. It's been many a times that the devil wanted to take his life, but God wouldn't let him because he had so many prayers over his head." And my mom just broke down crying. And I remember at that time that I felt like there was something more for me to do, and that I had to get myself on the right path to doing what it was that needed to be done. So I ended up leaving. I went to Job Corps in a different city, and I was able to turn my life around with the support of my family, who was there with open arms when it was time for me to put myself on the right path. What I realized now in this moment was that all of these things needed to happen for me to realize that one of the things was I wasn't built for that life. You know, I was a good kid with little to no direction, a male direction, I would say. I think that men have to have some kind of male in their life that's going to give them direction and tell them this is the area where you can excel, or you could be more than your surroundings. But there was very little of that. It was in short supply on the west side of Chicago. So a lot of things I had to figure out on my own, you know, and I ultimately did figure them out. But things could have turned out much worse for me. There were also people around me who knew that I wasn't built and I wasn't that caliber of person. One person who looked out for me, he was actually the youngest brother of a family that was notorious on the west side. And he would always check on me, give me a ride home, make sure that I wasn't out there too long. He knew I was gonna do what it was that I wanted to do, but he just looked out for me. You know, he looked out for me and because he felt like other people should be looking out for me that weren't, he said, "Yo, I'm gonna look out for you and make sure that you're okay." Because he knew I was a good kid. I was just misguided, you know, and I appreciate him to this day because he helped me out a great deal. And I didn't understand it then, I didn't know it then, but he did, you know. And wherever he's at in the world, man, I hope that, you know, life is treating him kind. But I think it's important that young men have mentorship and have somebody. So I try now in my older years to be that mentor. It doesn't always work out. And I've had to change my direction in how I mentor. But because of that, because of those things, I try to do what I felt like I wasn't getting at that time. But that always sticks with me. No, you could just cut it there. We can do like an exit on it. I think oftentimes, man, we think that the situation that we're in is all that there's ever going to be. But if we're able to change our minds, if we're able to listen to the people who really have good intent for us and want the best for us, if we're able to disconnect ourselves from what we're supposed to be, because oftentimes we believe that we're supposed to be what we see out here in the world. It's the only thing that we know. Also, we look around us and we see the drug dealers and the people in the street have all the influence. People look up to them and they have all the women. If we're able to see past all that and realize that there's a future on the other side and that this isn't the only direction that we have to go, we can clearly see our way to doing something better with our lives. And maybe later on in life, we become a better influence for somebody else. And that's the reason why I do these videos as well, is so I can be a good influence on somebody else. Like I said, there's pretty much not anything that I haven't done that somebody from my demographic and my circumstances has done. So I can pretty much give everybody advice on these situations. I've been able to turn it around by simply turning my mind state around and realizing that I wasn't my circumstances. I wasn't all of the things that were seemingly stacked against me early on in life. I could be whatever it is that I wanted to be. My mom would always tell me this, but I don't think that you can get the same message from your mom that you can get from another man who's on the same path or who's on that path to being what it is that you want to be in life. So, and I had to learn a lot of lessons under pressure. And I think it's important as a man that you have to learn some lessons under pressure. Either you create the pressure for yourself or life will create the pressure for you. And you'll learn that way or you won't. When you get yourself to the other side of things, though, you realize why you had to go through some of the things that you had to go through. Diamonds are built under pressure. Things that are beautiful in this world are built under pressure. And people who do great things are oftentimes built under pressure.